You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Post-employment privacy obligations are often overlooked, yet they are critical for ensuring lawful and respectful treatment of former employees. When someone leaves an organization, whether voluntarily or through termination, the employer's responsibilities do not end. Records must be managed carefully, access must be revoked promptly, and references must be provided with fairness and restraint. These obligations extend across legal, security, and reputational domains. Failure to handle post-employment properly can lead to data breaches, privacy violations, or even litigation. By viewing offboarding as a structured process that protects both the organization and the individual, employers reinforce trust and compliance. The goal is to close the employment relationship with professionalism, ensuring that information is managed responsibly and that rights are respected long after the working relationship ends. An offboarding checklist provides structure for the termination process. This checklist should cover both technical and administrative elements, including the collection of company property, revocation of system access, and confirmation of final payments. For example, ensuring that laptops, ID badges, and company-issued credit cards are returned reduces risks of misuse. Documenting each step prevents oversights and establishes accountability. A checklist also reinforces consistency, ensuring that all employees, whether executives or hourly staff, receive the same structured process. This fairness strengthens both security and organizational credibility. By treating offboarding with the same rigor as onboarding, employers signal that the life cycle of employment is managed with care from start to finish. Immediate access revocation is one of the most urgent elements of offboarding. Accounts, badges, and remote connectivity must be disabled promptly to prevent unauthorized access. In today's digital environment, even a few hours of lingering access can create risks of data theft or sabotage. For example, failing to revoke VPN access could allow a disgruntled former employee to download sensitive data. Automated deprovisioning systems help enforce consistency and speed. At the same time, communication with the departing employee should remain respectful, ensuring that revocation is framed as a routine security practice rather than a punitive measure. This balance maintains security without eroding dignity. Device return and data extraction are equally important. Employers must ensure that laptops, phones, or other equipment are collected, and that corporate data stored on those devices is properly retrieved. This process should include both structured methods, such as imaging hard drives, and practical checks, such as reviewing whether external media like USB drives have been used. Mishandling this stage risks losing valuable company data or exposing confidential information. At the same time, employers must take care not to overcollect, respecting the individual's personal content if devices were used for mixed personal and business purposes. Responsible collection ensures that data integrity is preserved while respecting privacy boundaries. Bring your own device programs complicate offboarding, since personal and corporate data may be intermingled. Containerization or mobile device management systems allow employers to wipe corporate data from personal devices while leaving personal photos, messages, and applications intact. For example, removing a corporate email container while preserving personal text messages demonstrates respect for boundaries. This approach prevents disputes and builds trust that the employer is not intruding into private life. Without these technical and policy safeguards, BYOD offboarding can become a flashpoint for employee dissatisfaction or even legal challenge. Properly designed, it achieves both data security and individual respect. Exit interviews are a common practice, but they require privacy boundaries. Employers may wish to collect feedback about workplace culture or reasons for departure, but they must avoid intrusive questioning about personal matters or protected characteristics. Sensitive details such as medical conditions or family plans should not be solicited unless voluntarily offered. Documenting exit interviews with restraint ensures that information remains useful without creating unnecessary risks. The purpose is to gather insights for organizational improvement, not to pry into personal lives. Respectful handling of these conversations reinforces dignity even as the employment relationship concludes. Separation agreements often include confidentiality clauses and require careful document handling. These agreements may cover severance, non-disclosure, or non-compete terms. Employers must ensure that such agreements are stored securely and accessible only to authorized personnel. Overly broad confidentiality clauses risk scrutiny, especially if they appear to restrict legally protected activities such as whistleblowing or concerted labor action. Governance in this area requires both precise drafting and disciplined management of agreement records. Confidentiality can protect both parties, but only when balanced against broader legal protections and public policy considerations. Payroll and benefits administration continues beyond employment, requiring careful handling of sensitive records. For example, COBRA benefits require the employer to manage health coverage transitions while protecting personal medical and financial information. Errors in handling this data can expose individuals to privacy harms and organizations to regulatory penalties. Employers must also coordinate final pay, accrued vacation payouts, and tax reporting with diligence. Ensuring that payroll and benefits data remains confidential during this transition period reinforces the principle that privacy obligations do not end at termination, but continue until all financial and administrative ties are resolved. At the end of employment, the reasonable expectation of privacy shifts, but does not disappear. Former employees still expect their personal information, whether in personnel files, payroll records, or stored communications, to be managed lawfully and respectfully. Employers must ensure that retained records are used only for legitimate purposes, such as compliance with regulatory requirements, and not for improper surveillance. For example, monitoring a former employee's personal email account after departure would be unlawful and unethical. Respecting this boundary demonstrates integrity and protects the organization from claims of post-employment intrusion. Union and collective bargaining agreements may also define post-employment obligations. Provisions may dictate how records are handled, what information can be shared with other employers, or how off-boarding communications are structured. Employers must honor these contractual terms, which reflect negotiated protections for workers. For example, an agreement might require that only neutral references are provided for union members, or that exit interview data cannot be used for disciplinary purposes after separation. Complying with these terms reinforces trust in the labor management relationship and prevents disputes. Managing security keys, secrets, and credentials is an essential technical obligation during offboarding. System passwords, cryptographic keys, and administrative credentials must be rotated or revoked to prevent lingering access. For example, shared administrator accounts should be updated immediately to prevent misuse. Credential management demonstrates that offboarding is not just about physical property, but also about securing the digital perimeter. Failure to rotate credentials can leave systems vulnerable long after the employee has left, creating risks of both intentional misuse and accidental exposure. Vendor and system role deprovisioning extends these principles to third-party platforms. Many employers rely on external services for payroll, collaboration, or analytics. Former employees may still have access through vendor accounts unless proactively removed. Employers must coordinate with vendors to revoke access and confirm that roles are updated. Oversight in this area prevents gaps in security and ensures that offboarding covers the full ecosystem of tools, not just internal systems. Vendor deprovisioning demonstrates comprehensive risk management across the supply chain. Intellectual property and trade secret stewardship are also critical at departure. Employees may take with them knowledge of proprietary processes or confidential customer lists. Employers must reinforce obligations through exit interviews, confidentiality reminders, and secure collection of company documents. For example, requiring confirmation that no trade secrets remain on personal devices reinforces accountability. Balancing protection with fairness is important. Employers should enforce legitimate protections without overreaching into general skills or experience employees carry with them. This balance respects both organizational rights and employee mobility. Litigation hold screening is often overlooked but can be crucial when employees depart. If the individual is involved in ongoing or anticipated litigation, their records must be preserved despite off-boarding processes. Legal teams should coordinate to identify whether a departing employee is subject to preservation obligations, ensuring that devices, emails, or files are secured before deletion. Failing to implement holds risks spoliation claims, which can undermine defenses in court. Integrating litigation hold screening into offboarding reinforces legal diligence and protects organizational credibility in disputes. Finally, alumni communications and records must be governed responsibly. Organizations may wish to maintain contact for networking, recruitment, or brand reputation, but they must respect opt-out rights and privacy preferences. Alumni newsletters, events, or reference requests should be managed through structured processes with clear consent. For example, maintaining a database of former employees for professional outreach requires the same safeguards as customer marketing lists. Respecting opt-outs and providing transparency ensures that alumni relations are built on trust rather than unsolicited contact. Alumni programs can become a source of goodwill when managed with respect for privacy and choice. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Records retention is one of the most important post-employment responsibilities. Employers are required by law to keep certain personnel and payroll files for defined periods, even after an employee departs. These records may include applications, performance evaluations, tax forms, and disciplinary documentation. Retention ensures that the organization can respond to audits, legal claims, or regulatory inquiries. At the same time, retaining more than necessary creates privacy and security risks. Employers must balance legal compliance with minimization, holding on to data only as long as required. Establishing clear retention schedules helps organizations align practices with federal, state, and industry mandates while signaling to former employees that their information is being handled responsibly. Certain statutory records have specific retention timelines. For example, employers must keep Form I-9 documentation for either 3 years after the date of hire or 1 year after termination, whichever is later. OSHA requires retention of injury and illness records for 5 years, while benefits documentation may need to be preserved for even longer under ERISA. Each type of record comes with its own regulatory clock, and failure to meet these deadlines can result in fines or legal exposure. Employers should maintain a master retention calendar that integrates these requirements across departments. This structured approach avoids both premature destruction and unnecessary over-retention, protecting both compliance and privacy. Destruction is as important as retention. Once the statutory period has ended, employers must securely dispose of both paper and electronic records. Destruction certification processes provide documented proof that records were properly eliminated. For paper files, this may involve shredding with a reputable vendor, while electronic files should be permanently deleted from systems and backups. Certification protects the organization in case of later disputes, demonstrating that data was not improperly withheld or leaked. Secure destruction also prevents identity theft or unauthorized use of sensitive information, reinforcing the organization's duty of care long after the employment relationship has ended. Segregating archives of former employee data is another safeguard. Former employee records should be separated from active personnel files with restricted access controls. This prevents inadvertent misuse and ensures that only those with legitimate business needs can view sensitive information. For example, payroll staff may need access to tax records for compliance, but managers should not be able to browse archived performance reviews. Segregation creates both security and clarity, showing that post-employment records are treated with special caution. It also simplifies audits and retention reviews by maintaining clear boundaries between active and archived data. Email and chat records present special challenges. Many organizations retain communications for compliance, but indefinite storage of former employee mailboxes can be problematic. Policy should define how long email and collaboration data are retained after separation, subject to legal holds and regulatory requirements. Defensible deletion after review reduces the risk of over-retention while ensuring evidence is not lost prematurely. For example, retaining a mailbox for 6 months before deletion may balance operational continuity with privacy. Clear communication about these practices builds confidence among employees that their communications will not be held indefinitely without purpose. Backups often complicate retention practices. Even when records are deleted from active systems, they may persist in backup archives. Employers should establish tombstoning or purge windows that ensure ex-employee content is removed from backups after a defined period. This prevents records from lingering indefinitely in inaccessible storage, which could create risks if backups are ever restored or compromised. Documenting how backup data is handled demonstrates diligence and reinforces that retention policies apply consistently across all storage layers, not just primary systems. Backup governance prevents data sprawl and strengthens overall compliance. References are another sensitive area of post-employment obligations. Employers must decide whether to provide detailed references, neutral verifications, or no references at all. Neutral policies confirming only dates of employment and positions held reduce risks of defamation or negligent misrepresentation. While some organizations may choose to provide more detailed references, these must be carefully documented and fact-based. For example, describing documented performance issues may be lawful, but vague negative impressions can create liability. Reference policies should be clear, consistent, and communicated to managers, ensuring that all references align with organizational standards and legal protections. Defamation and negligent referral are real risks when providing references. A negative comment that is not supported by documented evidence could expose the employer to defamation claims. Conversely, failing to disclose known misconduct that poses risks to future employers could give rise to negligent referral liability. Balancing these risks requires discipline. References must stick to verifiable facts and avoid subjective judgments. Training those who provide references and routing requests through HR helps ensure consistency and accuracy. Documenting the basis for reference statements further reduces the risk of disputes. Many employers turn to third-party verification services to handle reference checks. These services can provide efficiency and consistency, but they also introduce data protection responsibilities. Contracts must require data minimization, confidentiality, and secure handling. For example, a verification vendor should confirm employment dates without sharing unnecessary details. Employers remain accountable for vendor practices and should periodically audit compliance. Outsourcing references can streamline processes, but governance ensures that outsourcing does not erode privacy or accuracy standards. Vendor oversight demonstrates that responsibility for former employee data does not end when a third party is involved. Consent-based disclosures offer another safeguard in reference practices. When an employee explicitly authorizes the release of certain information, employers can provide more detail with reduced risk. For example, an employee seeking a security clearance may authorize disclosure of performance and disciplinary records. Employers must maintain authorization records to demonstrate that consent was given knowingly and voluntarily. These records protect both the organization and the employee, ensuring that disclosures are lawful and defensible. Without consent, references should remain limited and neutral, reflecting the principle of minimal, necessary disclosure. Emerging state privacy laws increasingly extend rights to former employees. These may include the right to access, correct, or request deletion of certain personal data. Employers must adapt processes to handle these requests promptly and transparently. For example, a former employee may request a copy of their personnel file or correction of inaccurate contact information. Balancing these rights with retention obligations requires careful coordination between HR, legal, and IT. Responsiveness demonstrates accountability and helps maintain goodwill even after employment ends. Ignoring or mishandling such requests risks regulatory penalties and reputational damage. Cross-border retention presents additional challenges for multinational organizations. Some jurisdictions require that employee records remain within national borders or impose stricter retention limits. For example, European data protection law emphasizes minimization and may restrict retention beyond what is strictly necessary. Employers must harmonize global retention practices while respecting local rules, often resulting in region-specific schedules. Localization demonstrates respect for sovereignty and reduces the risk of regulatory enforcement. Multinational compliance requires not only technical solutions, but also governance frameworks that align local laws with global policies. HR analytics based on attrition data can provide insights into workforce trends, but privacy must be protected. Employers should anonymize data before using it to study turnover patterns, ensuring that individual identities are not exposed. For example, aggregated reports may reveal that a department has higher than average turnover without linking data to specific former employees. Anonymization enables organizations to learn from attrition while respecting post-employment privacy. This practice balances organizational improvement with the principle that former employees' personal data should not be exploited once the relationship has ended. Audit readiness is the final dimension of post-employment record management. Regulators, litigants, or auditors may request access to retention schedules, destruction certificates, or reference records. Employers must be able to demonstrate that policies are not only written but also followed. Maintaining defensible documentation ensures that the organization can withstand scrutiny and defend its practices. Audit readiness transforms compliance from a theoretical commitment into an operational reality. By embedding accountability into post-employment processes, employers close the loop on the employment life cycle with integrity and preparedness. Post-employment responsibilities illustrate that privacy and compliance do not end with termination. From structured offboarding to disciplined reference practices and carefully managed retention, employers carry obligations that extend well beyond an employee's final day. By linking offboarding with defensible records governance, organizations protect themselves while respecting the rights and dignity of former employees. Neutral references, secure retention, and documented destruction practices demonstrate maturity and accountability. Ultimately, post-employment compliance ensures that the conclusion of the employment relationship is handled with the same care and professionalism as its beginning, reinforcing trust across the entire life cycle. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.